not necessarily a conference speaker. I have given workshops like 3 or 4 times at different PyCons, but it's the first time I'm giving a proper speech. So, yeah. Now we have to get through this together. Okay, so before I start the source of this presentation, the QR code to this and all the sources to things I mentioned will be shown at the very end. Cool. So that's me. I really enjoy surfing, but I live next to the Baltic Sea, which is not very surfable. I tried once, and then I hurt my back. I also really enjoy space exploration and astronomy, and I try to pass it to my daughter as well. And yeah, I'm not a data scientist. I'm just a humble software person trying to wrap my head around all the new AI craze, and I try to share my findings with you. I have been coding in Python for food for over a decade now. I have worked for some big tech, for some small tech, for some fintech, and currently I have been contracting for overseas companies for the past 6 years, I think now. Okay, so how are we going to get through this? First, I would try to show you what the problem is, because I think this is not as clear as it might seem. Then I'll go through the challenges, through the oh my god, and hopefully towards the end I will be able to present some solutions which you would be able to apply to your own projects. Okay, so for this particular example, let's imagine a corporation, like an evil insurance company, who decided to have a chatbot on their webpage. I named the company Delay the Pay, because why not? So here is one of the examples of how a conversation between a user and such a chatbot could look like. I will just read it out loud. How do I extend my car insurance? To extend your car insurance, log into the portal, nopay.delaythepay.com, select login, then my products, find your car, and click extend. So does it look like a reasonable answer from a chatbot? Most likely, to most of us. Then we have another case. The question stays the same. How do I extend my car insurance? And the chatbot responds, I don't know how to help with that. Would this be like an okay answer? Would this pass our test? No. Most likely not. But what if we get into areas like this? So the answer here is you can extend your insurance in our insurance portal. I mean, okay.
It's really human-like.
Yeah. So, yeah. Oh yeah, that is peak AGI. And I mean, it's really unclear if that's expected or if that should pass a test. Is there a test for it, or how do we define a test for it? And then we can ask about extending car insurance, and we might end up with something like this. Of course, it's usually not that bad. Most of chatbots will not be talking about the Roman Empire when asked about insurance, but it can get quite random at times. And then we're just looking at it and we're like, seriously? So, okay, those were some made-up, poorly written HTML plus CSS examples, but what about some real-life scenarios? Real-life example, I'm pretty sure most of you heard about some big failures of companies having an AI tool exposed to end users. So I just picked 3 of those. Air Canada was actually ordered to pay money to a customer who was misled by their chatbot. Another notable example is this guy who decided to buy a new Chevy for $1. So this did not end up in a legally binding agreement, but like it was huge, and no Chevrolet dealership has a chatbot anymore since that time. And then DPD also decided to have a chatbot on their webpage, and it didn't cause any legally binding agreements, but it made them appear on BBC main page, which I would say could be considered a PR disaster. So there are people responsible for quality of those things, or we would hope there are. And it looks like they, I mean, I don't know, maybe they got laid off a few months ago, as a lot of people. So in this presentation, I will use my personal experience. My personal experience comes from 2 projects, and I will spend like 3 minutes talking about where this comes from. So one of those is a chatbot which is placed in a portal only for logged in customers for a company I contract for. It has access to our knowledge base through functions, and it also is able to explain things to users, to list some entities created by a user. And my second experience is my CLI Gen. It's my hobby project, which I created some time ago. So basically, it's just a fancy way of asking for how to do something in terminal with a one-liner. It was fun, and it was also challenging, and I used some experience from that in this presentation. Okay, so we're moving to challenges, and I'm pretty sure most of us here could list many of those. So I will try to just explain those which are most burning or worst, at least for me. So everything starts here, and it comes as no surprise that everything is non-deterministic. But it really sucks. Like, if you are responsible for quality in any software project, then having different outputs for the same input, and this being an okay scenario, is completely new to us. I don't think we ever had something like this before. So that's just an example, one of the tests which I wrote for that chatbot. This is the input that I gave to it to create a user entity named like this, and this is the user entity that was created. I mean, that's just a new line character added somewhere there. Is it okay? Is it not okay? I mean, it failed in this sense that it's not the same string, but does it really matter? We'll try to answer this in a second. Then everything is slow. All of examples here are using OpenAI API. So those transactions take time, answers take time, and it's just slow. So someone might say, why don't you just execute it in parallel? Well, the API is heavily rate limited. So even if you try to send multiple requests at the same time, parallel your tests, sooner or later you will hit the wall of rate limiting, and it just doesn't scale. You cannot have 3,000 tests hitting OpenAI API directly at the same time. And then everything changes on monthly or even weekly basis. Thanks, OpenAI, for creating a new model 2 weeks before my presentation. Yeah, right. Another great example is when you ask ChatGPT to create OpenAI client, like just write ChatGPT command line version. It creates it nice and easy, it's super fast, and it's outdated. Like ChatGPT creates outdated version of ChatGPT client. It's using a deprecated OpenAI module. So it's just super hard to catch up with everything. And then I know requirements are never present, but in this case, they are even less present, right? Because things are just changing so rapidly. And then another huge thing is deciding on scope. What do we want to test? Not only how we want to test it. I don't really have time to go into details, but we can test for security. We can test for hacking initial prompt. We don't want our chatbot to be talking shit about competition, but we also don't want a user to know that our chatbot was asked not to talk bad things about competition, right? It just looks bad. We can test for performance, we can test for answers correctness. We can check if our chatbot can avoid the topics that we asked it to avoid. And we can also test for how functions are called and for how those functions function. And Google likes Googling for help. If you try to Google for anything related to testing AI-based system or testing AI chatbot, you will get plenty of results with AI tools for testing. And we don't need that. Like, I don't need AI tools to test software. I need to test AI software. So how did we even end up here? Like, what happened? I will take a quick detour here. So that's a technology S-curve. It's basically product performance versus time or engineering effort. So almost every new technology follows the same path. At first, you need to put a lot of time, a lot of effort to get not really great results. Then the technology takes off. You get a lot of increases, a lot of performance increases, a lot of new features with reasonable effort. And then we arrive at a plateau. And there are multiple technologies. There are multiple technologies that are just there, like 90-something% ready. Probably you'll have some ideas in your mind. My two favorite examples are self-driving cars. We've had cars that can drive themselves for like, what, 10 years now? And we still drive our own cars. Same goes for speech-to-text. We have our phones which can accept speech and turn it into text. But we're not using it because it's 96% accurate, and who needs texting with 96% accuracy? There are also some projects which are there, very low on this curve, with those super fast games only in front of them. And we don't really know where we are in terms of generative AI or AI for software. And we don't really have any way to know, because to know that you're on a plateau, you need a few months or years to know that there have been no major successes made recently. So the only way that we have to catch up with things is like keep working, keep making them better and better. Okay, so I think I went quite fast through those through a few slides before, so I will take my time in talking about the solutions here, which will hopefully give you some relief. Whoops. Okay, so the very first tool anyone who did any software testing ever used is just asserting. Those tests are taken straight from my CLI Gen project. It's as simple as that. So I'm just asking list files in a directory in the most simple way, and I expect my tool to respond with ls. There is no other answer that I would expect that would be okay. That's simple. Same goes for removing a file, or maybe it's even more obvious for removing a file. I don't want file removal command to be anything else than removing the particular file that I'm asking for. But it's not good enough in many cases. So deep sequence matcher comes for help for cases like that one new line character that I mentioned before. This is basically a tool to judge how close two strings are together. And for many cases, this would be good enough if you want your chatbot to create something named something, and you are okay with an extra space or with a dot at the end. That's your way to go. It's built in Python. You don't need to pip install anything. It's extremely fast. And then we are getting into the areas of a bit more sophisticated tools, one of them being deep eval. I have used deep eval for a few months now, and I'd like to give a huge shout out to Jeffrey from Confident AI. Those guys are actually answering emails, like 50 probably at this point, and they are super helpful. So deep eval is, apologies for showing code on the screen in such quantities, but it didn't really make much sense to split it into multiple slides. So bear with me, just a few slides with code. That's taken straight from their documentation. Let me very quickly walk through what's happening here. So first, we're just importing our module, deep eval, and then we need to define a metric. So in this case, we are going to use answer relevancy metric, threshold for passing, and then we have 3 strings. One is input, so that would be our test data. This is what we want to ask our product under test. Then we have actual outputs. So this was what our product under test answers. So this is what our chatbot would answer back. And then we have retrieval context, which is essentially expectations. This is what we want this to answer, and we can run it. So let's try to use it against our chatbot from Delay the Pay. So that was the first screenshot, something that we all decided is reasonable answer. This is a simplified test case. So again, it's just defining a metric, the 3 strings, This would be our test data. This is the actual output coming from the product, and this is the expectation. And then we just run the test. This is a lot of text, so just let me summarize it. It's passed. It took 9 seconds, which is quite OK. And then we are even given an explanation. So in this case, it says the score is 1 because the response is perfectly relevant and directly addresses the question about extending car insurance. It even told us, great job. So let's look at the other screenshot. I don't know how to help with that, so we would expect the test to fail on something like that. Yeah, so that's I decided to remove some of not really necessary code there. So in this case, the score is 0 because the statement, I don't know how to help with that, does not offer any relevant information or steps how to extend car insurance. Makes sense, right? So let's go to a bit more difficult case. So this is the human level AGI answer. And it passed, right? Because this metric really doesn't check for that. It only says that it addressed the question. So, of course, we can make it fail properly. DPFL offers a lot of metrics. Those are just 3 of them that I decided to use for this example. So we added faithfulness metric and summarization metric. Let's run it again. So in this case, it's even more text, so just let me talk about it. It's a failed test because relevancy score is still 1, but both faithfulness and contextual precision are at 0. For example, contextual precision is 0 because the summary includes extra information which were not mentioned in the original text. So we're getting some explanation about what actually happened here. So just to be correct and to make sure it actually works, let's see a very negative case. So what if we answer something about Roman Empire when asked about extending car insurance? Whoops. It fails, but interestingly, faithfulness score didn't fail because there were no contradictions in the text. That's why it's very important to properly find the metrics that we're going to use. Okay, we are like 20 minutes in, right? Okay, so this was the most fancy tool out of those that I use and that I want to recommend. But there is much more you can do to improve your AI-based project. So functions. I would just briefly say what functions are, even though most of you probably know. So functions are pieces of code in your code base which you expose to, in this case, OpenAI API. You tell the LLM that those are the functions that it can use. You provide some descriptions, and it can decide to use those. So you can test your functions, and you can test how the model calls your functions. And it's super important, and it's also super easy. You can just mock out your functions and then do regular assertions on the mocks that were called, hopefully, that were called. Then we have the temperature parameter. So the temperature parameter is basically how unpredictable and spontaneous our answers are. Lowering the temperature parameter is almost always a good idea when it comes to chatbots, but we also cannot do it all the way down to 0 in most cases. So just try playing with this parameter. And then fine-tuning the initial prompt. Many of us have probably been there. It's not easy, and touching something in the initial prompt when the project is underway may cause like terrible consequences sometimes, but it's really worth it, right? The initial prompt is what the system takes as a starting point, so it might help a lot, or make things even worse. But that's why we have version control. And there is one more trick there. We can use asserts on the answers that we're getting back from, in this example, OpenAI API, and we can make sure that those answers don't contain things which we don't want to show to the user. And there is like no magic there. It's just regular asserts or regular checks for whether something is in our list of forbidden words or forbidden phrases. A great example to add there would be initial prompt. You can assert whether your initial prompt is leaked in the returned answer. We can even do it with this diff matcher. We can also add curse words. For example, if those DPD chatbot developers added a list of curse words, they wouldn't get their chatbot to basically swear at competition. So yeah, I really recommend doing that to some extent at least. And make sure your chatbot is not able to leak your list of forbidden words. So assuring quality in any AI-based system is just a gift that keeps giving. And I think we need to use it as an opportunity, right? We need to keep learning. We need to keep exploring stuff. But yeah, I mean, it's hard. So I decided to put some key takeaways here. So it's still uncharted waters. And not only is it like uncharted waters, we don't know how much more the intense progress will take. We don't know whether we are at the plateau or are we in the middle of this, or are we even just starting? Is it going to get worse in terms of how many new things will happen in upcoming months? I don't think we are just starting, but we don't really have a way to know. Don't forget about assuring quality, especially when you're presenting anything to end users, and you probably are. Choose the right tools for the job. Deep eval takes a lot of time to pip install, has some dependencies, and maybe just an assertion would do the trick in that particular case. And then if there are any technical managers here, they would hate me, but reserve time for maintenance. Your tests will need maintenance, and you need to reserve time for this. Your OpenAI Python-based tool will need OpenAI module to be upgraded if you want to work with like 4.0 or next coming models. We need time for that, and people tend to forget that, especially those in charge of human resources assigned for a project. So that was my main part. Thank you all for your attention. I have just some very last thoughts. I think we have like 2 minutes, so that we have 5 minutes left, more or less. Okay. So I just wanted to say just a few more tips. Do test full integration. We had a case just a few days ago when Microsoft Azure-based knowledge-based search was just not available. So the OpenAI chatbot wasn't returning any errors, but it was just saying, I don't know how to help with that because it was not able to reach an external function. Another thought that I wanted to share after this presentation was ready. DeepEval also offers custom metrics. You can use OpenText to create your own metric and decide what are the criteria for passing or failing. And I think it's super cool. And also, I think we should be all grateful for an amazing community that we have. The community makes it so much easier, like random dudes in California responding my emails about some questions of using DeepEval, or a random person on the internet whose presentation I saw just answering my emails about some presentation details. So yeah, I think that's really worth thinking about at least. Cool. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Artur. We have 5 minutes, and on Slido there is 2 questions. Do you want to answer?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, I'll try to read it.
Okay.
So, how would classical an NLP-based technique work out in testing LLM output like Blue, Rogue?
So this is where I'm going to use my humble software engineer card. I have no idea. Like, go ask data scientists. But yeah, really, this can be optimized, and you can surely do it better. So this is more of a like higher level testing. This is think about things that I showed more as like end-to-end test or user acceptance test. But yeah, definitely consult data scientists before touching any of this.
Okay, we have another one. Is it possible to even come up with a universal testing metrics for output of LLMs?
No. No, like nothing universal is possible in this area. It's, I mean, unless universal means if your chatbot is super strictly bounded to a single task, then maybe you can find something which is universal to this particular task. But like, as we've just seen, the explanation of Roman Empire downfall had some metrics with passing grades. So there is no single silver bullet metric to be used. But that's a tempting idea.
Okay, if you have other question. Okay, for the next, as I said in the opening, it's better to use Slido for question. So during the talk you can put down and people can read from it. But if you have a live, if you're okay, can you stand?
Hi, wonderful talk.
Thanks.
I have a question about DPVal. It's the first time I see it. So the first question is it reproducible? That is, when you run DPVal on a task case, does it always answer the same number for all the metrics? And second part, is there an LLM inside DPVal that computes these metrics, or is it something totally reproducible and inspectable?
Okay, it's yes and yes. So first, it is reproducible, as in, if you set those metrics in a good way, it will return the same values, usually, but it's also LLM-based. And you can either use OpenAI, or there are a few options to feed it, like basically close to anything. But the default out-of-the-box version uses also the GPT models, so it's not deterministic. But that's why we try to use multiple metrics to kind of make it deterministic. And to make it a bit more deterministic, we can set more strict thresholds. But yeah, it's not very deterministic.
We have another question on Slido. You can find the link for Slido on the schedule, so directly in the talk space. So do you have any ideas on why many evaluation tools are built with LLMs testing LLMs?
I think it's doable. I think it's just easier. But I don't know, go write more stuff. Like, we need more evaluation tools. We don't really have enough. And there is, like, we logged onto the DPVal version a few months ago, and then I had a question to the team. So of course I just showed them an email, 51st, and their answer was like, "Oh, but the version that you are using is 123 releases behind our master." Like, we need more tools. They are being actively developed. So I think the reason why we are using LLMs to test LLMs is because that's the only thing that can handle LLMs at this point.
Okay, thank you. I think we've finished the time for question, but maybe Artur can answer other questions after the talk.
Yeah, I'm very happy to talk. So if anyone wants to chat, just find me. I'll be around until Saturday.
Give the last applause to Artur, and thanks again for the talk.
Thank you.